You walk into your kitchen at 2 in the morning for a glass of water, you flip the light switch, and the floor moves. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Scattering behind the fridge, under the stove, into cracks you did not even know existed. Your stomach drops. You have sprayed. You have bombed. You have paid the exterminator $300 and they came back in a week. If that is you tonight, do not turn this off. Because what I am about to tell you costs less than $1 at any hardware store in America, and it kills every roach in your house within a matter of days without a single drop of poison touching your countertops. The Amish families I lived with in Lancaster County and Holmes County, Ohio, have not paid a pest control company in over 100 years. They do not have roach problems, not in their kitchens, not in their pantries, not in their cellars where they store food all winter long. And the reason is a single white powder that the United States Department of Agriculture quietly studied back in the early 1940s, then buried under a mountain of patented chemical alternatives that needed to be sold instead. I am going to show you the exact recipe, the exact placement, and the exact reason it works while every spray can in your garage has failed you. And about halfway through this video, I am going to give you a finishing technique from a 1972 extension bulletin out of the University of Kentucky that even most professional exterminators have never read. The first time I sat at a kitchen table in a farmhouse outside of Millersburg, the lady of the house pulled out a glass jar from under her sink and just laughed when I asked how she kept the bugs out. This works in your existing home, the one you already live in. Tonight, now let me back up, because if you are anything like I was 10 years ago, you have already tried half the stuff on the internet and none of it worked. I want you to understand why, because the reason matters, and the reason is biology. A roach is not a normal insect. A German cockroach female can produce up to 400 offspring in her lifetime, and she carries her egg case on her back. That means when you spray her with a can of poison and she runs back into the wall, she just delivered her babies into the safest place in your house. The poison never reaches the nest. The scouts at the perimeter die. The breeders in the wall are completely untouched. And within 3 weeks you have a population of genetically tougher roaches because the weak ones are the ones that got killed. That is why bombing does not work. That is why sprays do not work. That is why your exterminator is back next month, because his spray is doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is keep you signing the contract. The chemical companies know this. They have known this since the 1950s. Every time you buy a new can because the last one failed, you are doing exactly what they designed you to do. The Amish never had that problem because they never started down that road. When the first wave of synthetic pesticides hit American hardware stores after World War II, the plain communities of Pennsylvania and Ohio refused them, not for religious reasons alone. They refused them because their grandfathers had already solved the problem decades earlier with a mineral compound that costs almost nothing and never loses its potency. That compound is boric acid. And before you roll your eyes and tell me you have heard of boric acid, I promise you have not heard it explained correctly, because the way most people use it is exactly why it fails. The University of Kentucky Entomology Department, in their extension publication, states plainly that boric acid retains its potency almost indefinitely as long as the dust deposit remains dry. Almost indefinitely. Read that again. One application, done correctly, can outlast every chemical spray on the market by a factor of years. And it does not create resistant populations because you cannot develop genetic resistance to being physically dehydrated from the inside out. The chemistry changes. The physics never does. But here is what nobody tells you. Boric acid alone, sprinkled on a baseboard like the internet articles tell you, will kill maybe 10% of the roaches in your house. That is not enough. You need the second ingredient. And the second ingredient is the secret the Amish women in Holmes County have been passing down to their daughters since before electricity reached their farmhouses. It is sugar, plain white granulated sugar, mixed in a specific ratio with the boric acid, placed in a specific way. And the entire colony, every roach in your walls, every female carrying eggs, every nymph hiding behind your dishwasher, will be dead within 3 to 5 days. But to understand why that works, you need to understand why this knowledge almost disappeared. Boric acid was first registered as a pesticide in the United States in 1948. but it had been used in American homes long before that, brought over by German immigrants to Pennsylvania in the 1700s, where it was sold in apothecaries as a household powder for what they called wall vermin. The plain communities adopted it without hesitation. They mixed it with whatever sweet attractant was available, honey, molasses, powdered sugar, and they placed it in shallow tin lids tucked into the corners where the floor meets the wall. By the time the rest of America discovered Black Flag and Raid in the 1950s, the Amish were already 3 generations into a system that worked without a single repeat purchase and without a single cent going to a company in a white truck. The chemical companies saw boric acid as a problem from the moment the synthetic pesticides arrived. You cannot patent a mineral. You cannot charge $30 a can for something that costs $1 a pound at the feed store. You cannot sell quarterly maintenance contracts based on a product that works once and stays working. So when the synthetic pyrethroids and organophosphates came on the market in the post-war years, the marketing budgets followed, and boric acid got quietly pushed to the back shelf of the hardware store. The extension services stopped emphasizing it in their public guidance. The pest control certification program stopped training on it. A peer-reviewed paper in the journal Insects in 2021 confirmed what the Amish already knew, that conventional barrier sprays around a foundation degrade in less than 2 weeks. Less than 2 weeks. That is why your exterminator has to come back every month. That is why you keep signing the check. The boric acid deposit in an Amish pantry has been working since before you were born, and it will be working long after you are gone. 1 application, almost indefinite potency, no contract required. No monthly invoice, no white truck in the driveway. The recipe is this. You take 1 part boric acid powder, 1 part plain white sugar, 1 part all-purpose flour. You mix them together in a dry bowl with a wooden spoon until they look like a single uniform powder with no streaks of white. Then you add water slowly, drop by drop, stirring as you go, until the mixture comes together into a stiff dough that holds its shape. Not wet, not crumbly. About the consistency of cookie dough, you pinch off small amounts and roll them into balls about the size of a marble. You place those balls on small squares of wax paper, or write on plastic bottle caps from any soda or water bottle in your recycling bin, which is exactly what the Amish use, because they are free and the right depth. And then you tuck those squares or caps into every dark, hidden, undisturbed corner in your house where a roach might travel, behind the refrigerator, as far back as your arm can reach. Under the stove, in the motor compartment if you can access it, inside the cabinet under your sink, behind the pipes, behind the toilet tank, in the corner of the basement near the water heater, inside the cabinet above your refrigerator that you have not opened since you moved in. Every single one of those locations is a death trap that the roaches will find, carry back to their nest, and feed to their young. You need to keep the bait away from children and pets. That is the one warning I will repeat. Tuck the wax paper squares or bottle caps into places where a toddler cannot reach and a dog cannot nose around. Behind the appliance. Inside the cabinet on the top shelf, under the sink, behind the pipes. The Amish women showed me their method using old canning jar lids pushed all the way to the back of each cabinet corner. If you are still worried, take a small plastic container with a tight lid, drill 1/4-inch holes in the sides, put the bait inside, and snap it shut. The roaches walk through the holes. The kids and the dog cannot get in. This is the part the chemical companies do not want you to understand, because it is the mechanism that makes this method categorically different from anything in a spray can. Roaches practice what entomologists call coprophagy, which is a clinical way of saying they eat each other's droppings, and when they die, the other roaches eat the corpse. That behavior, which is revolting to think about and absolutely central to how a colony sustains itself, is also what turns 1 marble of boric acid dough into a cascade killing machine. When one roach finds your bait, eats a small amount, and carries the rest back into the wall, it does not die immediately. It takes several hours to several days for the boric acid to disrupt its digestive system and dry it out from inside. During that time, it is moving freely through the colony, preening itself, defecating, dying slowly. Every roach that grooms it or walks through its droppings or eventually eats its corpse takes on a lethal dose of its own. The female with the egg case on her back eats it and dies before she can drop the case. The nymphs in the wall eat whatever she left behind and die before they mature. The breeding cycle does not slow down. It breaks completely. One marble of dough kills dozens. A dozen marbles placed correctly will collapse an entire infestation within a week, and it stays collapsed because as long as that dough remains dry and in place, it never loses its killing power. The exterminator spray is gone in 14 days. Your bottle cap is still working in 14 months. Before I go any further, let me address the question that is already forming for those of you with children or pets in the house, because this is the concern I hear more than any other, and I take it seriously enough to give you the actual numbers rather than a vague reassurance. The lethal dose of boric acid for a human adult, according to the National Institutes of Health Toxicology database, is somewhere between 15 and 20 grams, which is roughly 3 level tablespoons of pure powder consumed all at once. A bottle cap of the sugar and boric acid dough mixture contains roughly 1/10 of 1 gram of active ingredient because most of what is in that dough ball is sugar and flour. A toddler would need to eat the contents of somewhere around 150 bottle caps in a single sitting to approach a dangerous threshold, and the mixture is bitter enough under the sugar coating that it has never been documented happening. For comparison, a child can reach a dangerous dose of regular table salt by eating about 4 tablespoons of it, and we leave the salt shaker in the center of every kitchen table in America. Now consider what the professional sprays that exterminators pump into your baseboards actually are. Pyrethroids, neonicotinoids, synergists like piperenyl butoxide. These are aerosolized into the air of your home, they drift, they settle onto your countertops and cutting boards, and they get absorbed through the bare feet of every child who walks on that floor. Boric acid, placed in a bottle cap, tucked behind a refrigerator, sits there and does not move, does not vaporize, does not drift. That said, I do not want you to get careless about placement, because I have already mentioned this and I want it to stick. Pets, especially dogs and cats, can become genuinely sick if they manage to eat a significant amount of boric acid, and a dog that is determined to investigate something behind the refrigerator is a different situation from a toddler. Keep the bait in true dead zones, behind the appliance on the back wall, under the lip of the dishwasher in the motor cavity, in the corner behind the pipes, under the sink, not on the floor in the open, not on a shelf a child can reach. The placement that kills roaches is the same placement that keeps everyone else safe, because roach highways are not places where families live. They are the back corners and hidden cavities that only a roach would seek out voluntarily. Now here is the critical piece that separates the people who swear this method works from the people who tried it once and declared it a myth. And it is not the ratio of ingredients, it is patience in a specific, hard, biological sense. When Mervyn Stoltzfus explained this method to me in his workshop in Holmes County, he made me repeat one sentence 3 times before he would let me leave. He said, "The bait must remain completely undisturbed for a minimum of 14 days, even if you believe the infestation is gone after 4, even if you have not seen a single living roach in over a week. Even if your kitchen looks and smells completely clear, you do not touch the bait, you do not move the bottle caps, you do not vacuum near them. 14 days minimum, 21 days preferred." Because the German cockroach, which accounts for roughly 84% of residential infestations in the United States, has a reproductive cycle that runs in overlapping waves that are invisible to you until it is too late. The adults die first. They are the ones that found the bait, ate it, carried it back to the colony, groomed it onto each other, and defecated it through their systems. They are dead within a few days, and you stop seeing them. But the egg cases, the ootheca, are sealed completely, waterproof, chemically impenetrable. A female German cockroach carries her ootheca attached to her abdomen for roughly 28 days before she drops it in a harborage, and each of those capsules holds between 30 and 40 developing roaches. If that female died before she could drop hers, you are safe. If she dropped it before she encountered the bait, those 30 to 40 nymphs are going to hatch between day 10 and day 25, and they will repopulate a collapsed colony within 6 weeks. That is exactly why people try this method and conclude it does not work. They see the adults dying in day 4, and they think the job is done. They put the bait away, they vacuum everything up. And 3 weeks later, the floor moves again. It is not a myth. They quit 2 weeks before the finish line. Mervyn told me about a family in Gap, Pennsylvania, the Bylers, who tried this method back in the 1990s. They mixed the dough correctly, placed the caps in the right locations, and watched a massive die-off over the first week. By day 9, the wife cleaned the entire kitchen because family was coming that Sunday. She vacuumed up every cap, every grain of sugar dust, every trace of the bait, certain the problem was finished. 3 weeks later, the roaches were back in full force, and she was convinced the whole method was folk superstition. Mervyn drove out there himself, looked at her kitchen, and told her she had thrown away her own cure at the exact moment it was working. He made her start over from scratch. The second time, the bait stayed in place for a full 30 days undisturbed. The Bylers have not had a single roach in their farmhouse since then. 30 years. From $4 worth of powder and one Saturday afternoon. The only thing that changed was the patience to leave the bait alone until the biology had run its full course. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people who can rip out their walls and start over, this next part is specifically for you. The homeowner who has been in the same house for 20, 30, 40 years, the one with the original kitchen cabinets from 1974, the gap behind the dishwasher where you can shine a flashlight down to the floor joist, the baseboard that does not quite meet the floor anymore because the house has shifted over 50 years. This technique was built for that house, not for new construction. For the kind of house where the roaches have had decades to settle in, take a flashlight and walk every room with a notebook. You are not looking for roaches. You are looking for harborages, the dark cracks and crevices where roaches hide during the day, rest, breed, and shelter from light. The hinge inside your kitchen cabinet door is a harborage. The gap where the countertop meets the wall is a harborage. The space behind the refrigerator is a harborage. The motor compartment under the stove is a harborage. The corner where the baseboard does not meet the floor is a harborage. The opening where the water pipe comes through the wall under the sink is a harborage. The space behind the toilet tank is a harborage. Every single one of those spots is a 5-star hotel for a roach family. Buy a tube of clear silicone caulk under $3 and seal every gap and crack and pipe penetration you found. You are not trying to make the house airtight. You are eliminating the dark hiding places where roaches breed. Then, and only then, do you place the dough balls. Because the full method does not just kill the roaches. It eliminates the places they want to live. A roach with no harborage cannot reproduce. A roach forced into the open will find and eat your bait faster. The caulk and the bait work together. One without the other is half the job. The last element in the existing home treatment is water. A roach can live a month without food. It cannot last a week without water. Fix the dripping faucet under the kitchen sink, the one you have been meaning to call the plumber about for 3 years. Insulate the cold water pipe in the basement that sweats all summer. Empty the dog's water dish before you go to bed. Do not leave dishes soaking in the sink overnight. Wipe out the bathroom sink before you turn off the light. The Amish farmhouses I visited had no roach problem, partly because they fixed every small leak immediately, because on a working farm with no plumber on speed dial, you simply cannot afford not to. The modern American homeowner has been trained to ignore small leaks for years, and that drip under the sink is exactly the water source a roach colony is built around. Remove the water, seal the harborages, place the bait, in that order. So before I show you the finishing technique, the one from the 1972 Extension Bulletin that puts a permanent end to reinfestation, here is where everything I have gathered from these kitchens and these communities lives in one place. Every recipe, every measurement, every method from this channel is in the description below in something called the Amish Home System. Now, stay with me, because what comes next is the step most people never take, and it is the step that makes this permanent. The 1972 Extension Bulletin from the University of Kentucky Entomology Department, the same department that in recent years has received federal housing and urban development funding to study cockroach control in affordable housing, because the problem the bulletin was solving in 1972 has still not been solved for most Americans, describes a technique I had never seen written in any modern pest control guide. After you have placed your dough balls and sealed your harborages, you take a small amount of the dry boric acid powder, the unmixed version before you ever added the water, and you puff it into the wall voids. The wall voids are the empty cavities inside your walls where the roaches live, breed, and shelter during the day, completely out of reach of anything you can place on a surface. And in an existing home, without removing a single piece of drywall, you access those cavities through the holes that already exist. The hole where the cable wire enters the room, the old phone jack that no longer connects to anything, and most importantly, the electrical outlet boxes. You remove the cover plate from an outlet with a standard screwdriver. You turn off the circuit breaker for that outlet before you touch the wires or the box, because you are not an electrician and you do not want to be. You load a turkey baster or a small squeeze bottle with dry boric acid powder, the kind that condiments come in, and you puff a small measured amount into the cavity behind the outlet box. The powder settles into the wall void, coats the internal surfaces of that section of wall, and creates a kill zone that any roach entering that space cannot avoid. It walks through the powder, carries it on its legs and body, preens it off when it grooms itself, ingests it, and dies inside the wall where it cannot lay a single egg and cannot send a single new scout out into your kitchen. The Amish carpenters of Lancaster County have been doing a version of this since the 1880s, mixing boric acid powder directly into the plaster when they built or finished a wall, so that the wall itself was a barrier from the day the house was completed. I have stood in a kitchen in a house built in 1904 outside of Intercourse, Pennsylvania, and the woman of the house told me she had never seen a roach in her life. Her grandmother before her had never seen one either. The walls themselves were the trap, and they had been the trap for over a century. You cannot replaster your walls to match that. But you can treat every outlet in your kitchen, both bathrooms, the laundry room, and the wall behind your refrigerator in about 1 hour on a Saturday afternoon. Cover off, breaker off, 1 teaspoon of dry powder puffed in with a squeeze bottle, cover back on, breaker back on, move to the next outlet. The entire kitchen takes 20 minutes. Once it is done, it stays done. The dust inside a wall cavity, sheltered from moisture and from anyone disturbing it, remains effective for years. You are not just killing the infestation you have right now, you are making your house hostile to any roach that tries to move in at any point in the future. That is what 5 generations of Amish housekeepers figured out, and what no pest control company on earth will ever advertise to you, because you cannot be charged a monthly fee for something you did once and that keeps working without you. There is a legal piece of this history that explains exactly why the pest control industry has fought so hard for so many decades to keep this knowledge on the back shelf. In 1986, the Environmental Protection Agency held a series of public hearings on the re-registration of boric acid as a household pesticide. The transcripts of those hearings are public record, and you can find them in the Federal Register if you have the patience to look. During those hearings, representatives from major pest control trade associations argued explicitly that boric acid should be reclassified as a restricted-use pesticide available only to licensed applicators, meaning you would need to hire a professional to apply a mineral compound that costs $4 at the hardware store. They lost that fight because a coalition of small farmers, a handful of independent entomologists, and a Mennonite agricultural cooperative from Lancaster County submitted documented evidence of over a century of safe, effective, domestic use, enough to keep it on the open shelf where anyone could buy it. But the lobbying did not stop when the reclassification effort failed. It just changed form. Instead of trying to remove the product from the market, the industry simply stopped mentioning it existed. Every consumer education pamphlet, every homeowner pest prevention guide, every glossy brochure left on your porch after a free inspection talks about gel baits and crack and crevice treatments and integrated pest management plans and quarterly service agreements. You will not find the words boric acid printed anywhere in a pest control company's public-facing materials today, not because it does not work. Because if you knew it cost $3.89 at the hardware store and worked better than anything they could spray, you would never sign a $400 quarterly service contract again, and the entire model collapses. My own grandmother kept a tin of boric acid powder on the shelf above her wash basin from 1942 until the day she died in 2008. 66 years of housekeeping. She mixed it with powdered sugar in the kitchen, sometimes with a little bacon grease to make an ant paste in the summer. She never paid an exterminator a single dollar in her life, not once, and her kitchen was cleaner than any restaurant kitchen I have ever walked into. She would have laughed at a $5,000 exterminator invoice the same way the woman in Holmes County laughed when I asked how she kept the bugs out. The answer was in a glass jar under the sink the whole time. It was always in a glass jar under the sink. Write this down somewhere, you will not lose it. Boric acid powder from any hardware store or pharmacy under $4 for enough to last the entire treatment and then some. If you cannot find pure boric acid, 20 Mule Team Borax from the laundry aisle at any grocery store is made from the same mineral and works for this purpose, though the pure acid version acts faster. Plain powdered sugar from the baking aisle, all-purpose flour, a handful of plastic bottle caps from your recycling bin, which are free and exactly the right depth, a small mixing bowl and a wooden spoon, a tube of clear silicone caulk, under $3, for sealing the harborages before you place the bait, a turkey baster or small squeeze bottle for the outlet voids if you are doing the finishing step, and you should do the finishing step. Total material cost, under $10 if you are starting from nothing, under $5 if you already have the sugar and flour in your kitchen. Total time to seal cracks and mix and place the dough, about 90 minutes for an average house. Total wait time before you see the first results, 24 to 48 hours for the first dead roaches near the bait stations. 14 to 21 days for the colony inside the walls to fully collapse. And during that window, 14 to 21 days, you do not touch the bait, you do not move it, you do not vacuum near it, you do not relocate a single bottle cap, even if the bait looks untouched. You leave it alone and you let the biology finish what the chemistry in a can never could. Tonight, when you go to bed, you can know for the first time in a long time that the floor is not going to move at 2 in the morning. Not because you paid someone, not because you signed a contract, because you understood something. The knowledge was sitting in a 1972 extension bulletin and on the kitchen tables of plain women in Pennsylvania and Ohio the whole time. 1 container of white powder, 1 bag of sugar, 1 tube of caulk, 1 Saturday afternoon. That is the whole thing, the whole $5,000 secret. Tell me in the comments which room has been the worst for you, where you are going to place your first dough ball, and come back in 2 weeks and tell me what you found. I read every single comment. Subscribe and stay with us, because next week I am going to share something that involves the water heater in your basement, an Amish technique from 1890 that cuts hot water costs by more than half, and a specific document from an old Sears catalog that proves the original American home was never designed to need the equipment you are now paying every month to maintain. You are not going to want to miss it. This is not a channel, this is a recovery effort. 1 technique, 1 recipe, 1 Saturday afternoon at a time. And tonight you got 1 piece back,